Welcome all, and thank you very much for joining. My name is Yeonji Yeon. I'm the Technical Officer for Aging and Health at the WHO Regional Office for Europe. To raise greater awareness on the UN Decade of Healthy Aging, we are doing a series of short interviews to explore different topics to promote healthy aging. Today, we are going to go a deep dive on age-friendly cities and communities, or age-friendly environment. So in the WHO studio today is Ms. Natalie Turner, who is the Deputy Director for Localities for Center for Aging Better in the United Kingdom. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So to start us off, Natalie, when we talk about age-friendly cities and communities or age-friendly environment, what exactly is age-friendly environment, and who does it benefit?
That's a really good question, and the most important question, right? So we have a slightly adapted sort of definition of it in the UK, but basically what we say is an age-friendly community is a place which helps people age well, but then also helps them live a good later life. And those two elements are a really important part of the environments around age-friendly cities and communities. It's something that promotes healthy aging, better eating, healthy activities, income, social connection, so that when we get to later life, we have many of the resources that we need. But also it supports us, so if and when we maybe get some mobility issues or some of the other things that can arise as we age, our environment also supports us to continue to do those things, continue to have a good later life, and continue to do all the things that we valued all the way through our lives that matter to all of us.
That's great. I mean, this aligns very well with the UN Decade of Healthy Aging, is that we want to add life to years. It's not just simply living longer. And it's great that you mentioned about it's for everybody. In fact, we are all aging. So having a supportive environment for all of us is very important.
Yeah, 100%. It benefits, of course it benefits older people, but it benefits their families, it benefits economies, it benefits whole communities. I think older people aren't a separate group of people that live somewhere else. They're our family, our neighbours, our grandparents, our friends, our colleagues. So actually, it benefits all of us.
So at the Center for Aging Better, what are some of the age-friendly practices or projects that you initiate?
Yeah, so I can't take credit at the Centre for Aging Better. We can't take credit for all of the work that our network of age-friendly communities does across the UK. We have 70 cities and communities in the UK in our network. And so actually they are all contributing to that good practice that you reference. But I'm going to talk a little bit about one of the practices that the communities have set up, but then also I'll talk a little bit about one of the things that we've done at the Centre for Aging Better, we think, to support that more widely. And the first one is the age-friendly training. So this was started in the Isle of Wight in the UK, which is a rural and coastal area in the UK, and it actually has one of the largest or the highest percentage of older people in the UK. And all public services, but public transport in particular is really important for getting around the island and for people to continue to do those things we've just talked about. And they instituted this age-friendly training. It started off with the fire and the police, and actually sort of for public-facing, customer service-facing professionals on the island. But then they took it to bus drivers, and they developed a little course, 3 hours, where you got to understand, the bus drivers came together, got to understand what age-friendly was. And then they got a time to sort of walk in the shoes of an older person by wearing what's known as an age suit, which can mimic some of the issues that can happen to some people as they get older. It's not everyone gets older, but if you have a mobility issue as you age, that can have real restrictions on your movement and also things like eyesight. So they got to wear that suit, think about it, and think about their customers and what they might need. And as a result, they made changes to their behaviour. They wouldn't take off so quickly, drive off so quickly when older people got on the bus, and maybe would slow down a little bit more before people got off the bus. And as a result, older people, there were less trips, fewer falls, and for the bus company, fewer complaints as well. So that benefited everybody, and they've actually taken that training on now to be part of their professional development, and it's also spread around the UK. So I think that's a really good example of an age-friendly practice that can make a difference. And then one of the things that we've done at the Centre for Aging Better is set up a age-positive image library. You can see some of the background here. Images are really important, actually, and how we see ourselves and others as we get older can make a big difference to how we feel about aging and later life. And too often the images we see are either stereotypically frail, maybe hunched over. You might not even see the face, it might just be wrinkly hands, or stereotypically active, like throwing yourself out of an aeroplane or running a marathon at 90. And actually the reality is somewhere in between. So we've set up a free image library of over 3,000 images of a real mix, people doing gardening, being at work, being with their families, people from different backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds as well. So just to represent what aging actually looks like, not the stereotypes. And I think those are two good examples, one of which is free. It's free to change your photography in anything you put out, and one of which maybe costs a little bit more money but can have a big impact. So I think for me, those are really typify what an age-friendly practice can be.
That's great. Thank you very much for sharing that. You know, part of the Decade of Healthy Aging is to change the way we speak about age and aging. Having images tells 1,000 words, because we can feel respected and seen by the images and the words that we use. 100%. And so that's very important as you talk about age-friendly practices and working with the bus drivers.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's really important, because what I love about the World Health Organization framework is that it looks at both the physical environment, the built environment, those practical things in a place like housing, like transport, but it also thinks about the social environment. So, you know, it's all very well having a pavement that you can walk along, but actually, do you have something at the end of that pavement there you feel included, you feel accepted, and where you recognize it as a place that you are, you know, you're meant to be. And so it's both those things.
That's the key to age-friendly environment, is working across different sectors, not just health, but urban planning, transportations, housing, health and social care services. Do you have any experience from your work about how you bring these different sectors together, and how are older persons involved in the planning of this age-friendly environment?
Yeah, and probably lots of different examples. We've got different size communities, from small towns to large city regions, and different resources. So some of it can be about bringing all the different stakeholders together in one place to talk about ageing. Put in front of them a map of the city, put in front of them some of the stats around the growing ageing population, which I'm sure many of your viewers will know about. And actually start to discuss, well, what does this mean to you in the transport industry if more of the people using your services are older? What needs to happen? In housing, do we have the right housing if more people are growing older or living alone in later life? You know, what does that mean? So bringing all those people together to have a conversation, you can do that in a big event with lots of sticky notes and, you know, and to develop a plan for your area. Or you can just start talking. You know, if you're in a small place, it's about reaching out and making relationships with people in these areas and having those conversations in a smaller way. So there's lots of different ways to do it. And older people, I know your question was around older people, so yeah, sorry, don't let me to interrupt, but older people should be absolutely in those spaces and in those conversations, yeah. And sometimes it's bringing alive a stat can be quite a dead thing, that's a very vague concept, but you could, if you aren't able to actually bring older people together in dialogue with different stakeholders, just bringing a story in and bring it alive. If someone says, you know, says the difficulty out loud, getting on a bus, or I mean, we talk about buses as if they're the only thing, or getting into the high street, not being able to sit down, not being able to do their favourite walk anymore. That brings it alive, and actually that, I think, is one of the most persuasive things.
Yes, thank you for raising that personal dimensions, the voices of older persons is very important as we create an environment that's inclusive for everybody. And it becomes very practical, whether it's setting up a bench at the end of the road and to making sure that the pedestrian has enough time to cross the street. And those are very great examples of age-friendly practices.
Really good examples. I was in a meeting just the other day when someone was talking about there's in their community, there's a park that's really famous in the area. That's really beautiful, that lots of people like to take the family or to do walks around. And there's one part that's really hilly. And actually for people who got, maybe that got harder and they had mobility issues, they were less able to make that whole loop. Just putting one bench at the top of the hill made the difference as to whether lots of people could continue to make that walk that they'd made throughout their lives. Maybe when they had young children, maybe as they've got older, they're able to stop and rest before they carry on. And it's tiny little things like that. And actually it's talking to older people who will tell you that. Most people would look at that park and see nothing wrong with it. It's only someone who's walking that park, who's experiencing that change, that will be able to tell you that thing is needed. So that's why older people, in principle, but also practically, are important to include in the conversation.
In a way, when you design for older persons, you are in fact designing for everyone.
Everyone, yeah. Who doesn't? You know, a pregnant woman would want to sit down at the top of the hill. Yes. I would want to sit down and enjoy the view. Yes, yeah, exactly. Right. So exactly right. That. Yeah, it is, and I think bringing the whole community together to have this conversation. Where should we put? We can put some benches in. Where do we need them? And having that joint conversation can throw up lots of insights.
Can you share a little bit about fundings? Like, you know, when we have this great ideas, bring different people together, how does one fund or create this age-friendly environment? Is it one of the challenges?
It is one of the challenges. Actually, we've just recently did a bit of a mapping project in the UK, and there is no single fund or no single sort of combination of funding for age-friendly. We also, in the United Kingdom, we also have 4 nations, devolved nations: England, Scotland, Ireland, Northern Ireland and Wales. And each of them have different government structures, but also funding structures. Wales has an Older People's Commissioner, and their office have secured funding through the Welsh Government for age-friendly communities at 1.1 million over a year, over 3 years, for all of their local authorities to become age-friendly, which kind of supports things like the coordination, that real sort of making something happen, but that doesn't fund projects in themselves. Northern Ireland, they have a mix from their public health funding, and in the UK there's a mix of local authority, local government funding, public health funding. That seems to be quite a common thread. About half of our communities get a lot of their support through public health, and then also charitable funding. But it's not straightforward, and I think that's one of the issues that we're having with making this uniformly available across the country, is the consistent fund and support. And I think we need to do more to make our national government in England, but also Scotland, and others, to secure a sustainable income stream for this work.
So you mentioned about the Centre for Aging Better support the national network. Mm-hmm. Does that help with connecting to the different countries within the UK and connecting to the local cities by sharing examples and practices, and perhaps even funding opportunities that you hear from one place that this could be applied to the other? Yeah,
absolutely it does. And we're really lucky to have a really good, strong relationship with both the Welsh Network and Northern Ireland communities. And Scotland, there has been less activity, but we have a good relationship with. They're just starting to do work through the Scottish Older People's Assembly. As the UK network, we've always and will continue to be available for any place within the United Kingdom, which is the national government. Within the United Kingdom, you can join. However, we recognise that there is a role for each of the sub-regional affiliates to actually support, because the systems are slightly different, the funding is slightly different, and actually in Wales as well, you've got dual language changes. So it's really important to kind of have a national network where people can learn from each other across all the different issues, but also where people can get more localised support. Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland are generally more rural, smaller areas. And actually, we've probably got more cities and city regions in England in the network. And we want a small rural place in England to be able to learn from a small rural place in Wales. Absolutely. Because they have a lot in common. But actually, sometimes when it comes to kind of finding funding streams or working with the health system, maybe they'll learn more from each other in England. So I think it's just whatever cuts.
Cities, and actually, in fact, this is what the WHO Global Network of Age-Friendly Cities and Community does, 100%. Where we bring people together, we share best practices, and in fact, people can also search, all of those cities, what they have done as well.
And that is, I always say there's no such thing as theft in the network of age-friendly communities. It's like...
if it works, it works.
If it works, it works. Borrow it. Go and have a look and see what other people have done. Lots of people, and I've been lucky enough to work in the UK and also in the US on this issue. And everybody thinks their community is different, their country is different. It couldn't work here because, well, maybe it couldn't work exactly the same here because of that thing.
That's where the
but you can
dialogue with
adapt
different
it.
people
100%.
and stakeholders is so important.
100%. But the problems and the issues are really common. So, you know, if it comes to public transport, maybe you don't have buses or you don't have as many trams or trains aren't an issue. You can look at what does matter for your community and you can make changes. And there's so much, there's almost nothing new in the world. Someone will have done something on your problem somewhere else. Take what you can from it and leave what you don't need.
Great. I mean, beyond what we just talked about, what do you think is the single most important benefit of an age-friendly environment, considering that our population is aging?
Yeah, gosh, there is no, oh gosh, you're pushing me down to say a single benefit.
Well, what do you think is the most important benefit?
I mean, I think we've talked a little bit about us all benefiting. I think, and as individuals, like we are all, if we're lucky, we're all going to get older. So I think it is really, really important that we're taking care of our, if we want to be really selfish, we're taking care of our future self. You know, I want to still live well and do the things that matter to me when I'm older. And some of the things that I'm working hard to put in place now will benefit me. That's the individual level. Societally, we can't ignore this massive piece demographic change. Older people are huge contributors to our economies. In the UK, more people turn 50 every day than leave school. And yet we seem to ignore that when it comes to workplace practices, to skills and further education, or even thinking, again, I feel like I'm going on about public transport or buses a lot, maybe my head's there today. But, you know, commuters, it's like you have to think about, you know, if more people are in work as we get older, we want those people still be able to get to work and get home and not give up, not leave work involuntarily, so they can continue to pay taxes, contribute to the environment. If we want them to spend money in the high street, we need to make both the products and the offers relevant to people as they grow older, but also we need to make it accessible so people can get around the shops, use the toilet, you know, and not so they can spend money. It's good for the economy. So it's like, you know, there's both the sort of selfish personal, it's really a good thing to do socially, but there's also like hard fist. It's like economically, we can't ignore this group of people.
Absolutely. When we invest in the communities, everyone thrives and everyone flourish, and we created such a great environment for everybody to age. As you said, if we're lucky, we become older persons in a place where we are respected and we can continue to be active contributor to our communities.
Yeah, 100%.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add about this topic?
About the benefits? No, I think maybe one of the we talked about the benefits in which kind of it's all good, right? And you also said about one of the difficulties, funding is being one of the difficulties. I think there are more. I think it is quite hard. Funding kind of follows from attention, I think, and political will. So I think one of the problems is this is seen as a slow burn, slow change, and actually I think our political and cycles are not set up well to deal with these big changes. And actually, it's a little bit like a lot of the work we talk about with age-friendly communities is about preventing problems from happening, and funding nationally and locally, especially we're in an environment now where there's less of it, is being spent on putting out the fire rather than preventing the fire from occurring in the first place. We spend a ridiculously small amount of our health budget on prevention, and the kind of preventions we've talked about are keeping people physically active, making sure that they're eating the food they need, have the housing they need to get older. The funding is just not there for that kind of prevention. So I think that is a big challenge. So just these sorts of things, getting it on the attention, on the radar, and being persistent.
A conversation like this, as we talk about age-friendly environments and what we can do together, sharing best practices, hopefully will drive a lot of attention as we talk about population is aging, longevity is here to stay, and what can we do to make our environment more supportive of everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to our audience and viewers for joining us today. And to learn more about the UN Decade of Healthy Aging and what WHO is doing on age-friendly environment, please visit our website. So until then, stay well and stay active. Thank you.